Under the wide sky of the Montana plains, where the horizon seemed to dissolve into a restless eternity, a solitary rancher struck a lantern against the evening's wind. Charles McGraw had learned to live by silence and routine, his wealth tucked into land and cattle rather than companionship. His neighbors said he was a man made of stone, a figure who belonged more to the earth and the slow rhythm of hoofbeats than to any human bond. Yet on that night, with autumn's chill sweeping dry leaves across the porch, his life bent in a way he had not foreseen. A body collapsed at his door, slender and trembling. Her breath was shallow, her voice scarcely more than a plea pressed into the boards. "Please don't hurt me, my heart is already broken." The words struck him with the force of a bullet, though they were no threat, only a confession of ruin. He stood frozen, lantern light trembling in his hand, and for a moment he wondered if she was apparition or mortal, conjured from some buried corner of his own loneliness. But when the glow fell across her features, he saw not a spirit but a young woman, fragile as rivergrass bent beneath a storm. He knelt, his fingers brushing her wrist to test its pulse. Warmth still lived in her, though faintly. The smell of dust clung to her, and a torn shawl barely held against the night's bite. Her hair, black as midnight pine, spilled loose, framing a face streaked with sorrow and travel. He lifted her carefully, his arms startled by her lightness. No words left his lips, but an old memory stirred, the memory of another woman long ago, who had stood at his threshold only to leave again, carrying his trust with her. He carried this stranger inside, not sure if mercy or folly guided him. When she woke, morning light crept through the cabin slats, warming her face. She stirred at the scent of coffee and firewood. Charles sat by the hearth, his back straight, his gaze heavy yet watchful. She flinched when she noticed him, clutching the blanket he had laid across her. "You needn't fear," he said at last, voice low as gravel rolled across a riverbed. "You're safe here." But safety was a word she had long ceased to believe. Her name, when she finally spoke it, trembled from her lips as though it might be taken from her if spoken too loudly, Kateri. She revealed little of her past, only fragments that slipped between pauses. Family lost, betrayal suffered, nights of running. He asked nothing more. Curiosity flickered in him, but he knew that wounds opened by force seldom healed clean. Instead he set about tending to her in small, unobtrusive ways. He left a bowl of broth within reach, stitched a tear in her dress, left water drawn fresh from the well. He let silence be the language between them, though in that silence, something unnamed stirred. Charles had long guarded himself from people. He remembered too clearly the sharp tongues in town, the women who courted his fortune but not his heart. Solitude had become his armor, and wealth his only companion. Yet watching Kateri eat in quiet gratitude, seeing her hesitate before taking even the smallest kindness, unsettled that armor. She had been hurt deeply, he could tell. Every gesture of gentleness met suspicion first, then a reluctant flicker of trust. It was not beauty alone that moved him, it was her brokenness mirroring his own. Word traveled quickly in the nearby settlement. Men at the saloon muttered that McGraw had taken in a native girl, a wild thing unfit for a rancher of his stature. The women looked at her with eyes sharpened by disdain when Charles brought her into town for supplies. Shopkeepers stalled, hands slow to reach for what she needed. Kateri felt the weight of their scorn pressing down, branding her as an intruder. Shame curled in her stomach, whispering that she would ruin the man who had given her shelter. She wanted to run to spare him the burden. But each time she thought of slipping away, she remembered the quiet way he had covered her with a blanket, the patience in his silence, the steadiness in his presence. Charles bore the town's judgment with a stoic stillness. His broad frame was enough to silence most jeers, though he could not erase them. He walked beside her with deliberate calm, never flinching, never quickening his pace. His silence was its own shield, and though he spoke little, the act itself declared, she was not alone. Kateri began to feel the stirrings of dignity where there had once only been fear. But dignity is always tested. One night, hoofbeats thundered in the dark. A group of ranch hands, emboldened by whiskey, rode out to McGraw's cabin. Their voices carried harsh through the air, demanding he send her away. "She don't belong," one shouted, a slurred edge of cruelty in his tone. Charles stepped outside, rifle in hand, though he did not raise it. His lantern burned steady on the porch, casting long shadows across the dirt. "Ride home," he said, his voice calm but carrying steel beneath it. "This land is wide. Let her be." The men laughed, mocked, spat into the dust. Yet they felt the weight of his gaze, the steady grip on the weapon he held but did not wield. Silence stretched between them like a taut rope, daring to snap. At last, muttering curses, the riders turned and disappeared into the dark, leaving the echo of their hoofbeats fading against the plains. From the window, Kateri had watched with breath caught tight. She had seen men fight, seen men destroy. But she had never seen restraint burn fiercer than violence. Tears slid unbidden down her face. When he returned inside, she collapsed against him, her sobs breaking the wall she had kept so carefully. I thought no one would ever stand for me," she whispered. Her voice cracked, not from fear this time but from the terror of hope. Charles did not answer with words. Instead, he placed a hand over hers, rough palm steadying her trembling fingers. In that simple gesture, she felt something she had long thought lost: belonging. 4 days after, she moved with lighter steps, though shadows of doubt still lingered. Could she stay? Would she ever be enough in a world so quick to scorn? The answer came quietly one evening. Charles set aside his work, kneeling before her with a gravity that made her heart seize. He did not speak like a man declaring conquest, but as one offering something fragile. "Stay," he said. "Not as guest. As my wife." The words hung between them, plain yet profound, heavy with all he did not say: companionship, trust, the promise of a home not built on pity but recognition. Her lips parted, yet no sound came. Chains of memory tugged at her, the fear of surrendering once more only to be broken. But when she met his eyes, she saw not possession but patience, not pity but respect. Tears gathered again, though this time they were not born of grief. Slowly, trembling, she nodded. "Yes," she breathed as though testing the taste of hope upon her tongue. Their union was not marked by grandeur. No priest, no bells, no town gathered. Instead, it was forged in the quiet sanctity of a shared table, of mornings spent mending fences side by side, of evenings where the hush of the prairie carried more blessing than any sermon. They stitched a life together from fragments, not perfect, but whole. At dawn, when the sun spilled gold across the plains, Kateri would stand beside him, the wind tugging at her shawl, and feel peace seep into her bones. Healing, she learned, was not sudden. It was a steady flame built from small acts of trust and grace. Charles, once a man hardened by solitude, found his silence no longer heavy but full, carrying her laughter and her quiet breaths within it. Perhaps the townsfolk never softened, but the land itself bore witness to their transformation. In the hush of prairie winds, in the lowing of cattle, in the lantern glow that warmed their nights, a story of resilience and quiet love took root. And though scars lingered on both their hearts, they had found a way to live not as outcasts, but as companions bound by mercy. If you listen closely to the wind that sweeps across that country, you may still hear her words, the ones she spoke long ago at his door, trembling and half-broken. And if you listen longer, you may hear how they were answered, not by cruelty, but by a man who chose compassion over pride. In the end, love did not strike like lightning, fierce and fleeting. It grew like dawn, slow and steady, warming even the coldest corners of a broken heart. And so, dear soul, if you find yourself bruised by life's judgment, remember this: the world may turn its back, but one act of mercy, one hand extended in quiet faith, can change the shape of your days. Somewhere beyond your fear, a lantern may yet be burning, waiting to guide you home.